Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the FootyNotes Podcast. So, what a weekend it was of football. Premier League is back, and really, really exciting stuff from most of the teams, unless you're an Arsenal fan. Everybody really looked prepared for the season on the opening day, including the teams that lost, actually. I'm thinking about a game like Newcastle that made me think, wow, these two managers taking a lot of disrespect from a lot of football fans, pundits, reporters, everybody, seemingly dismissing the skill that they have as experienced managers in the league. And I guess this thing sometimes happens whenever people get bored, because I remember there was an era of a manager who eventually got phased out, like um, Martin O'Neill, Alan Kirbishley, and maybe later on people like Alan Pardew. I mean, some of them had a fair run. Don't get me wrong. Some of them had a fair run, and then just opportunities dried out over time. And there were many others, especially like British managers who had chances over chance over chance over chance. Allardyce being one too. However, I do think sometimes that criticism of these older guys is over the top and just a little bit too respectful, and it gets personal sometimes. I think some people do in their criticisms of these two guys. I'm not gonna make David Moyes the second coming of Alex Ferguson or anything like that, but man, um, what he's done at West Ham starting last season and then continuing into this game in Newcastle this weekend was really, really, for me, like really impressive to see him find a team to make his own, and a team that can play really good team, like really good football. I mean, I think people forget very easily how well his Everton teams played. I think a lot of people like to make fun of like the Fellaini era, but that team, like with a lot of players, actually Sylvain Stan, Mikel Arteta, who I'm going to talk about a little later, um, Tim Cahill. There were several players who played in that Everton team that he coached, including Andy Johnson, who was not the greatest of players, but they had, he was able to form teams at Everton and refresh and found a way to keep them relevant for a good chunk there of time in the 2000s, in the early 2000s. And I think, Manchester United don't look at him if he hadn't done anything significant. So anyway, I know that a lot of people, I would be opening a big can of worms if I was to relitigate what happened at United. Um, but if you ask me, I don't think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is, for example, a better coach or manager than David Moyes. It's just that timing is also very important in these things. And I know David Moyes went to, Spain and other places and had runs that were not good in some spots. So, he's not perfect. But my goodness, I just want to give him a shout out. That's why I guess what I'm trying to do here. Shout him out, as well as Steve Bruce, because he was the other half of the entertainment on the spectacle at St. James's Park. So it ended 4-2 West Ham, but I think Newcastle, had they had better quality up front, maybe even Joe Willock playing, I think they could have taken more of their chances than the two that they actually did. Could have been a 4-4. But I do think West Ham, their superiority in front of goal is what got them the game. And they also played a more complete game over 90 minutes. I think Newcastle started to wear out a little bit after the first maybe 45, 50, maybe if I'm being generous, 60 minutes. So that was a really, really cool game to watch. I almost didn't watch it, if I'm being honest, because I was like, oh man, Joe Willock's not playing. Fuck it, I'm not going to watch. But I did, and I'm glad I decided to watch that game because both teams showed up really prepared. A couple of other games that I want to talk about before I get into the worst game. for me as an Arsenal fan, but also like I want to just really talk about how I actually enjoy the football from other teams, and not just go sour grapes and talk about Arsenal the whole time, because there wasn't really a whole lot that the team gave, and so I don't want to give them too much time in this podcast, if I'm being honest. For this one anyway. So yeah, Newcastle also got Joe Willock, and they had a good weekend all around. I think the fans might be disappointed with the result, but I think they would have liked to see like that they saw a little bit of fight from their team. So kudos to them, and if they play like that, they're going to win more than they will lose this year. So, what other game did I enjoy this weekend? Um, Barcelona, Real Sociedad was an okay game. It was not that great of a game, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, even though it was a 4-2 game. Really boring. La Liga sometimes can be really disappointing. It's unlike the Premier League where, it's hard to tell if a team is going to win, even if they have a 1-2 goal lead with like 15, 20 minutes to go. That game always looked like it was in the bag for Barca. But let us see what other games. Everton against Southampton. What's crazy actually about this game as well is another game where I saw a team go with two strikers. Actually, both teams went with two strikers in this game. I think Everton set up with Richarlison partnering Calvert-Lewin up front. And then Southampton, they always play a 4-4-2 as well. And they had their new debutant, Armstrong, playing with Che Adams up front. Brentford, who also played against against Arsenal with two up front, Belmore and Tony. Then there was another game with two up front. Just trying to remember it quickly. Southampton, Everton. Oh, just trying to remember now really quickly. I think that might be the two that I'm thinking about. The two teams that played against each other, as well as Friday. And I started to see a little bit of like what looks like the return of the big man. I guess Newcastle and West Ham. Newcastle did play with like two up front but Saint Maximin was pretty much like a roamer, but like it was almost like a 3-4-1-2 with Almiron playing behind Saint Maximin and Callum Wilson. So that was the other team I was looking for. But what I was also trying to bring up with this, like, I like that I'm seeing some teams playing with two strikers because for too long in Europe, everybody has been trying to do what Barcelona did. And what most teams have been doing is been playing with a target man or just one striker who's not necessarily even a target man, but more like a striker who's a playmaker. And then with like hybrid forwards up front with like Mane, Salah, Messi, Ronaldo type forwards, like these guys who play as like inverted wingers who cut inside onto their strong foot and score curling shots and do all that kind of stuff, which is really beautiful and nice to watch. But as a person who's watched football trends come and go, I might be too early, and it may not even be a trend returning. But I'm quite enthused to see what I believe to be the return of the big man up front. A lot of those kinds of strikers have been phased out, phased out so much that Harry Kane and Robert Lewandowski seem to be one of the last few remaining strikers of that sort of breed. I know there are other people who are built the same way, play the same position, but they were not getting a lot of respect and recognition. But those two were. And so that's why I'm pointing them out. I'm not saying they were the only last two number nines remaining. But if I think back to a lot of teams, Burnley has always kept it real and like wanted to be a team that plays in that way. Andy, what's his face? Oh my God, his name is escaping me. He played for Newcastle, played for West Ham, went to Liverpool for like £35 million, and it's really going for me now. Ponytail guy, oh my god, English guy. What's his name, man? Flip, I'm getting annoyed now. Um, um, Andy Flippin' Carroll. There we go. Andy Carroll. That's what I was thinking about. People like that. Peter Crouch. A lot of other, big number nine, Mitchell Batshuayi type of guys. Benteke. You can see is that the longer down this list I go, a lot of these guys have not been getting a lot of respect, and not because of they were not. I don't think they were criticized for no reason. I think coaches started moving away from utilizing players like that. And so a lot of times when players like that had been played, I remember Arsenal having Olivier Giroud and not playing to his strengths, right? And they were getting other things out of him, but they were not playing to his strengths to make him shine. People like Ramsey and Alexis Sanchez and Ozil and other players who played around him shined more than him, because he was that generous a player. But anyway, I'm just making a shout for like the return of the big man, and I'm kind of excited about that. And it's been nice to see big men, forwards, kind of bully defenders. Defenders have had their way for a while with forwards. It's kind of good to see the other way, the bullying going the other way around. So yeah. Anyway, those are some of the things that I observed in the Premier League this weekend. The 4-2 goal game by Everton was also like a very good thing for Rafa to get a game like that and win his first game at home. And yeah, Richarlison, my goodness, the boy can play, man. And he's been going right through the summer as if this is. It's almost like he never had an off season. Comes back to this season, first game of the season. He's the main player up front for Everton. Shout out to Iwobi, got a little cameo, and calvert-lewin got a goal. He's very busy self and worked about, threw himself around and got himself a goal for his troubles for the day. I don't know what I think about Everton and Spurs, but if both of them looked better than Arsenal this weekend. Another game was Leicester Wolves. Wolves are probably, after Arsenal, are probably like the other team that looked a little bit light and a little bit like they have a lot of work to do if they're going to stay out of trouble this season between now and the end of August. So Wolves and Arsenal probably were the two least impressive teams, in my opinion, this weekend, because almost everybody else had, including the losing teams like Man City, played much better than, it's Man City. But they lost to Spurs in a game that, because I was watching it, I wasn't surprised they lost. I think Spurs are a bit of a matchup nightmare for Manchester City, especially when City are not like they're all well-oiled machine selves. It takes them a while sometimes to get going in seasons. Last season, they were like number 14 after 8 games. And then they went on a tear and fucking just obliterated everybody who was in front of them right through the winter months. And by the time it got to the spring, the Premier League season was pretty much concluded. So Spurs beat them 2-0 last year as well, in the same fixture. So it's not to say Spurs are now a great team, but what I will give them is that Nuno has been there after, for about maybe a month and a half, 2 months at best. I know that Tottenham were looking for a manager for a long, long ass time. Got turned down by a couple of people. I know that Conte and Fonseca were all dragged out and then pulled out of the move. very late on, like in such an advanced stage of negotiations. And then they also wasted a bit of time going after Gattuso. And eventually, Nuno fell in their lap, who was, he was not their first choice. Where I'm going with this is that I know that for most of the Euros, Tottenham was still looking for a manager. And they eventually found Nuno, or not the Euros, but most of the summer, sorry. They find Nuno, and he's been there less than 2 months, I would say. Don't quote me exactly on the dates on that, but I know like they just hired him this fucking summer. And they looked, this is the biggest compliment I can give them. They looked like they knew who they were, at least in terms of like approaching a game against Manchester City. And I remember tweeting at halftime, just before the game, before even Spurs scored, I was like, man, Tottenham, in a few weeks after Nuno getting there, they already look like they have a plan that will work against City that I believe will look better than anything we will do against City in 2 weeks' time. And Arsenal have had Arteta for 18 months, roughly, thereabouts. 18 months of him in the job. And he still can't seem to get the right tune out of his players. I don't care anymore about like whether it's the players or him. For me, it's like I'm watching managers go into jobs and making it work with whatever they have, including Ralph Hasenhüttl. I think you give Hasenhüttl the Arsenal squad we have, I think he's getting higher than 8th, or at least stands a chance. If you give Rafa Benitez these same players, they're not going on in like relegation form and losing or going winless for 3 months. I doubt it. I highly, highly doubt it. So something is going on there. It's probably a combination. I don't think he's clueless tactically, Arteta, but I think he does rub people off the wrong way because he can be a little abrasive and a little cocky sometimes, from what I'm able to see. And I think sometimes talented players who become managers who are also quite clever football talkers. I think Arteta speaks a good game. Just listen to him. Speaks a really good game. But problem is, I'm not gonna dwell and go too far down this line. But I know, for example, someone like Thierry Henry struggled with this as a young coach. His temper. I've seen people like Joey Barton, who I think people will love, but like Joey Barton is not an idiot. But like people who are young managers, sometimes they struggle to make that transition in terms of like relationship wise and managing players. And so I think Arteta's relationship side of things may be causing him harm and making people not want to listen to him. And whatever the reasons are, I'm not making excuses here. What I'm saying is he should be doing better with his team by now. And he's just had a whole summer. And that was one of the main excuses I was giving him. I'm going to come back to Spurs, but like I wanted to just make that comparison. Like I'm not saying Spurs will finish above Arsenal. I'm not saying Spurs are better than Arsenal. I'm just saying going into the first game of the season, they look better than Arsenal based on what they were doing against a much better Manchester City team. I'm not even speaking about this before the result. You can go check my tweet about the way they looked before they even scored. I think there was a 27-minute period between me tweeting about how they looked and making this very same remark on Twitter, and then them scoring the goal and eventually winning the game. Like, see them scoring the goal and my tweet about how well they'll look is about 27-minute gap. Excuse me. So I just really worry about where this Arsenal project is going when I look at like all these different teams, like doing bits, man, like doing really, really well. And Tottenham got themselves a very valuable 3 points. Now I don't know how they're going to do, when they play against team who try to break on them, like against the Brentford, for example. But what I do like about what Nuno did with that team was he played to their strengths. He did exactly what Chelsea did as well. Be compact, don't give them gaps to play into in between the lines. And then when you get the ball, break and like really, really attack their players, their defenders. Be direct. Not route one isn't like play the long ball, but like take as quickest and the longest and straightest the line. Sorry, the quickest and like straightest line to our goal. And Son is the player to do that. Lucas Moura, player to do that. And Steven Bergwijn did his bit too. So I mean, kudos to him, man, for like, getting those guys to beat the champions on opening day. In their opening game anyway. And then, as if this weekend was not going to get any worse, like Man United also handled Leeds without any issues. 5-1, great game by Paul Pogba, who I think was a worthy man of the match. Bruno Fernandes scores 3 goals, no fucking penalties. And that Mason Greenwood kid, man, like I really enjoy watching him. Got himself a goal. Fred got in on the action as well. So United even had a party while Arsenal was pissing the bed on Friday. I'm going to pause here just for a quick break, and then I'm going to do the Arsenal game against Brentford. And then that's going to be just that for this week. But don't go anywhere. I'll be back in just a sec.
Hey guys, if you're thinking about a way to start your own podcast, I would encourage you to check out Anchor if you haven't heard of it. It's a free platform where you can create your own podcast, distribute it, having all the editing tools for free, all in one place. Check it out. Download the Anchor app for free on your iPhone or Google phone, whatever phone you have. If it's a smartphone, you can find the app by downloading it, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Check it out. Cheers.
All right, back again, guys. So, yeah, just before I talk about Arsenal, I think I spoke a few. The only games I didn't talk about really was through Liverpool 3 and Norwich losing at home 3-0 to Liverpool. So it's Norwich 0, Liverpool 3. And then the other game, or 2 games actually, that I didn't speak about because I didn't really watch them. Aston Villa against Watford. Watford were the home team, and Watford won 3-2. They were actually 3-0 up at some point, Watford. They almost shit the bed themselves. But they managed to hold on and got themselves a win. Then the only other game I hadn't spoken about was Burnley losing to Brighton at home 2-1. You won't hear me really talk a lot about Burnley if they're not playing against teams I'm interested in. I don't really enjoy watching them play football. I do enjoy at times Brighton though, so I might be talking about Brighton from time to time. As for the other games that I've spoken about, Newcastle 2, West Ham United 4, Tottenham Hotspur 1, Manchester City 0, Everton 3, Southampton 1, Leicester City 1, Wolves 0, Chelsea 3, Crystal Palace 0. Petro Vieira didn't have the most beautiful of days there, but we'll see how it goes. I think the Chelsea game would be harsh to judge him on because Chelsea will do that with most teams this year, I believe. Manchester United 5, Leeds United 1. I spoke a little bit about that before the break. That was a really good game. Pains me to admit it, but Man United looked like they got their swagger back. At least on the day, they looked it. Part of it could be the Leeds factor. Leeds can make teams look very exciting because they play such open and expansive brand of football. So, it's possible that Leeds had a lot to do with that. But for now, I'm just going to make it about United and make it about them finding their swagger back and entertaining people at the Theatre of Dreams after nearly 2 years of, empty stadiums. And then the game of the weekend for me was obviously Friday's game, which was Brentford 2, Arsenal nil. What a fucking game. And it started with early on that Friday, news coming out that Aubameyang and Lacazette were not going to be available to play due to illness. And then since then, people have been kind of making theories about what this could be, and is it like a case of infighting at Arsenal? Are they trying to just force their way out and things like that? Which I can understand, because it's the transfer season, and Arteta has pushed some senior players out, and I think most of them were rightfully pushed out of the club. But I really do believe that this guy was sick, and like the similar thing happened when Aubameyang was sick. Coming after an international break with malaria, a lot of people thought it was BS that he was sick, but it turned out he was really sick. So I'm not going to question their integrity of the player, or the integrity of the club, or the play of the coach right now. Even though I'm not happy with what they're doing in terms of the way they played, and the way they played 2 games leading up to that. And I want to frame this clearly, because I don't want to sound like I'm changing tack here in terms of my voice about Arsenal's play. My feelings about the way they play have nothing to do with what I think about the transfer business they've done. I think the transfer business they've done does show that like Arsenal are looking to plan for longer term, and like buying a certain kind of player, and I think they should continue to do that. The way they play doesn't really matter to me, whether they had done nothing in the transfer window, or they've bought the players that they've bought now. I think after 18 months, there should be, I think it's fair, maybe I shouldn't say it should be, I think it's fair for people to expect to see the same names across a number of weekends playing in the team. And I think it's fair for people, meaning like, the starting 11 should be, by now, if you have a coach for 18 months, the starting 11 should not be a guess. It really shouldn't be. People should know, when everyone is fit, these are the players we will go with. And people should also know what the formation is. None of this complex, whatever stuff that players are not able to do. And after 18 months, people, I think, especially at a club like Arsenal, should expect that their team will have an identity that is consistent. It may be adjusted here and there for, all of 6 games at worst against some of the best teams in the league, especially when you're playing away from home. So if you're thinking about the so-called Big 6, maybe you can adjust the way you play for 5 of those games when you're playing away to those other so-called Big 6 teams. But what we are seeing is not something that's convincing that these things are happening. What we are seeing, and maybe this is the identity, I refuse to believe it is, get the ball down the left, cross it in, and have no one run into the box to, come and make contact with the ball, trying to get it towards goal. The only chance that I saw happen in that way was when Pepe, in the 80 plus minutes, got a cutback from KT and forced Raya into a very, very good save on his lower right corner of his goal. And David Raya did a good job getting to it. But that's not even like the biggest point of this game, in that the attacking is the problem for sure. And I expected the game to go 3-2. I don't know what I was smoking to think we were going to go there and score 3 goals. But I had to be optimistic. And so I thought we were going to concede goals, because I was expecting Arteta to be more risk-taking and more adventurous with his team. And so because of that, I thought the club were going to score more goals because they're going to take chances. But because of that, they would then concede. It didn't turn out to be the case. We did have shots, but a lot of them were not the highest quality shots. And the other thing was, just like Spurs did against Man City, Brentford had, about 37% of the ball, for example, at halftime. Arsenal had 63% of possession. But we both had one shot on target. And the other thing that worries me about this is how inefficient we are with the ball. So we have most of it, but the other team doesn't need much to be able to cut through the middle and break and be into our goal in like 3 to 4 touches across, 3 to 4 passes across the move from their defensive third into our defensive box. So that's something that Mikel Arteta, I think last year was able to get away with, like slowing the game down because there were no fans, right, in many games. So we were able to slow the game down, so that way you reduce the number of possessions between the two teams. And then I don't know if this is correlation or this is causation, but this meant then both our team and the other team didn't get too many shots on goal, which led to better defensive numbers, right? Because you're not conceding the ball very easily, and the other team doesn't get as many opportunities to play with the ball and therefore threaten your defenders. This year, I've seen them try, at least in preseason, which I know it shouldn't count for too much, but I thought I would then be able to see something different in the first game of the season, and I didn't. So maybe Arsenal and Arteta have been telling us who they are all along, and we need to start believing them. But I'm not going to be, obviously making any conclusions, because things are always fluid in the game of football, just like they are in life. Things could change. And I'm not even talking about results here at the moment. I'm talking mostly about, like, why is it that players who've been there a long time don't seem to know what it is we're trying to do? And I'm not saying they don't know what we're trying to do, but at the same time, I'm not going to insult players, player after player after player, saying they're dumb or they don't know what we're trying to do. I'm sorry, they don't know what they're trying to do themselves, the players, and then excuse the manager and saying the instructions are clear. It's just the players. It's going to be hard to change players, and even harder to change that volume of players. So, like all other managers, I hope the Arsenal managers, the Arsenal manager, learns to use his squad in a way that would give them a chance to win games. I know that he had a form that was, leading up to third last year, but at the same time, that form came after 2 to 3 months in the fall, like basically from early October winning at Old Trafford, going the rest of October without a win, all of November without a win, and almost all of December without a win until the 26th, which was an improbable win against Chelsea. So what I'm trying to make is, last season was truly a season of two halves. Arsenal can't afford to have a season of two halves again and then finish eighth. I don't know what they're going to do. I am a big believer in the long-term project. I just wish they would be upfront about that and say, "You look, we're not looking to get into the European League spots at the moment. We will this year. We're gonna. I mean, I know probably fans would be fuming if they ever heard the club say this, but I do think it would be more helpful if they were to lean very clearly into that, and then just keep ripping it open, keep ripping it, like, let go of all the older guys who are costing a lot of money, and then in a year or two, you hit the transfer market with the experienced players in their prime kind of bracket, and spend 250, 300 million, and then you have yourself a team. and by then you will have given all these young players some reps in the Premier League to get used to the physicality, to find themselves as players, and really grow into their footballing identities. But at the moment, I don't know what's going to happen because I've seen too much of the same thing. Too much of the same thing, and I don't know how many more excuses we need to give. The board, the owners, the technical team, as well as Mikel Arteta himself for what we're seeing on the field. What we're seeing on the field is not good enough from this team, and I do think Arsenal are looking more and more like a group of divided individuals on the field, and I'm sincerely convinced that they are better than what they are showing on the field. I don't know. I'm not gonna try to make conspiracy theories and talk about mutinies or players not being with the manager. So, but something is not clicking. I don't think players don't like Arteta, but something is not clicking with the way he's coaching them, or what he's asking them to do, and what they deliver on game day. I really do hope that the players and him find a way, just like they did a little too late last season, but they did find a way. But I'm having a hard time seeing where the progress is coming from, because it feels like the guy just walked in last week, the way the team is playing. And I'm really like jealous when I watch Everton. Rafa Benitez has been there, for part of the summer, and they look like I don't like watching the way Rafa Benitez teams play, but you know how they play. You know their template, you know how they play. You know how Burnley play. They've been with Dyche for a long time, of course. But Rafa hasn't been with Everton for a long time, and he set up his stall, and he was able to get what he wanted out of them. Same thing I can say about Spurs and Nuno. I keep coming back to this. It was really astounding to me about like how understanding of their identity how they were, and how quickly they seem to have adopted um, a style that the manager wants out of them. Basically, Spurs look like Wolves with better players on Saturday. They looks like Wolves, but with better quality players, more mature players who know who they are, and they executed their game plan exceptionally well. So I know as an Arsenal fan, it's taboo to say things like that about Tottenham, but my fucking God, they did what they needed to do, and good for them. And so next weekend we got Chelsea, and Lukaku must have been licking his lips watching that game, with Ivan Toney having his way with Pablo Mari and Ben White, who didn't have a good game, but I think the kid will be fine. I think he's going to have a great career at Arsenal, but they need to surround him with players and not clowns. They need to surround him with players. Same thing with Sambi. He could be one of the he should be one of the few players who could walk away from that game at the Brentford Community Stadium with his head held high, and it was pretty cool to hear and read that like he fronted up and went and did a lot of media engagements straight after that loss. And his English is not great, but it's also not terrible. But he was fronting up straight after the game, talking to media people, and like really just facing up to the disappointment of the day. Which is another thing that Arsenal players, especially some of these familiar faces that are older, they tend not to face up to the media and put their headphones and run away from like having to answer for their performances. So I want to praise Sambi. I want to praise Smith Rowe, and I think Xhaka did okay too. The midfield was okay, but I do think Chambers behind Pepe on the day didn't work. What's perplexing was the fact that Chambers stayed as long as he did on the field, and when he did come off, Nuno Tavares, who's a left back, or at least was bought as a left back, came on as a right back. Whereas there were three guys who have played basically hundreds of games at right back in their careers and hundreds of games at right back for Arsenal. Obviously, the lion's share of that was going to Hector Bellerin. But Ainsley Maitland-Niles has basically made his Arsenal career as a right back or right wing back at times. But he's played a lot of minutes at right back. Didn't see the game, didn't get come on. Cedric played a right back for Arsenal, bought as a right back up, wasn't even used. A new 20-year-old kid was used instead. So I don't know what that was about, but you can read and make of it what you will. That was a little weird. And as a result, Pepe, because Callum Chambers was so awful, it was so easy to double up on Pepe. And I understand that, like Brentford have a very small field, and therefore, you need to play a lot faster in terms of the way you're moving the ball. The precision needs to be on point. And Arsenal couldn't do either. Couldn't play fast, and they couldn't be precise with their passing. So then that landed them in a situation where they couldn't penetrate. Like they found ways, but like it always took them a long time. Kind of like read a stat somewhere on Twitter today. I think it was from Scott something. I forget his name. O_that_crab. I think is his name on Twitter. He shared a tweet or a statistic or something about, or somebody was quoting a tweet from him about Arsenal, where I think the slowest or second slowest or one of the slowest teams in moving the ball from back to front. I think they were like 1.9 seconds per yard or something strange, man. Like it's a stat that I would never think to go look for. But what it points to how slow and methodical and cumbersome and laborious Arsenal have become in terms of the way they labor through the phases to get their way to go. And that's very easy to defend against. It's very, very easy to defend against, especially when you have experienced professionals on the other side who do tactics too. They do, they watch film and they look at the film sessions and they're like, oh yeah, this is what they do. Okay, fine, we'll figure it out. Brentford haven't stopped talking since they won on Friday. And I appreciate the feedback. They're like, yep, Winu, just bunch the middle, stop the good players from playing, and you got Arsenal. Don't let Smith Rowe. I mean, he did because, sometimes a good offensive player can find ways to break any defense. Andy Mail did break away, but it was few and far in between. So it's one of them things where Arsenal really have to figure out who they want to be really quickly. At the moment, we're like a poor man's version of Man City. We're like a poor man's Man City, where, if you saw as well, City can be really easy to defend against because Pep is a control freak and he likes to have players be super precise. Problem with that is that other teams watch it enough times, they're gonna catch you up. But then also on the flip side, City have almost $1 billion or £1 billion worth of squad that is able and capable to bail Pep out from his I guess anal ways, right? He's super anal and like very like boom 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 boom. Too tippy tappy and like basically playing the piano from one side to the other. They try to hit every note and try to score the perfect goal, try to be super precise. Whereas sometimes goals are scored by just a fucking long poke to the front, one-on-one, beat your man, hit a ferocious shot against the goalkeeper. Sometimes it's okay to be an animal. You don't have to be classy and like be caviar every time you play football. Sometimes all you need is a fucking hamburger. You don't have to eat prawns and all these fucking delicacies that people eat for $150 a serving. Sometimes a hamburger or a fucking crawfish boil, something that'll get you full and gets to work real quick, especially in the case of a hamburger. If you're from Cape Town, it gets me. But long stories, the game itself was an okay watch. I think Arsenal, they had a lot of the ball, but they just didn't threaten. And it's really tiring to watch that kind of football, if I'm being honest. Watching a team that seems so toothless, but with very expensive strikers. I know they were not on the field on the day, but I know we've looked the same way we did on Friday with Aubameyang and Lacazette the previous two games against Chelsea and Spurs. And then Thomas Partey, I don't want to make excuses about him not being there either, because, we still had international players. We still had players who should have been able to at least compete and be up for the contest. But it felt too much like men against boys. And eventually, Brentford showed us up. And I'm not going to complain too much about other things. I know people are going to say Leno was fouled or whatever, should have been disallowed, the second goal. But yeah, it's another sign for me. That goal is another sign of our naivete. Bert Leno gets suckered into that and doesn't then, do anything to bring it to the attention of the referees by either flopping and falling and forcing the issue on the referee or pushing the guy. He just lets him pin him down. Eventually leads to a goal. Nice boys, Arsenal, keep moving. I think that's another thing I noticed with Spurs when they're playing against City is that they were able to get engaged in a little bit of shithousery, to be honest, and they fucking have gotten street smart. I don't know if Nuno is the one who's done that, but I know for sure when Jose was there or Jose was there, he used to really try to provoke them and get them to be a little bit more ruthless. And that's another side that I think it comes and goes with Arsenal. I don't think they're as much of a soft touch as they used to be accused of, but there's still a lot of softness. And I hope that they're going to wise up and grow up, as the season, before the season goes too far. I do think in some kind of way that it's a blessing and like a weird good fortune that they get to play Man City and Chelsea. Just like I said in my last part on Friday, the season for Arsenal really will start at the end of August, because they could have lost these games against Chelsea and Man City, even if they were at full strength, to be frank. But we'll see how it goes. I will stop here for today, but I do hope that we will catch up on Friday before Chelsea against Arsenal. Wishing you all a great week. Take care. Cheers. Thank you for listening.